Hey guys, Kelade here. Let's go over PvP for Warriors today and also the Loyal to the End Azerite trait. For the best in slot Azerite piece for our chest is going to be the PvP chest, right? So of course, you're going to either get this chest just randomly from your weekly Mythic Plus cache, or you're going to be able to use a Warlord's trophy to upgrade a lower eye level one. Now, we have been able to get this chest previously, so if you've been keeping up with your conquest caps, you should have at least a 415 eye level version of this. And then of course, if you got unlucky with your, either 2100 weekly, 2400, whatever it is, if you have a Warlord's trophy, you can just upgrade this to 445 like I did, or of course you can always just get it from the weekly chest that way. Now in regards to how to actually get started in PvP, if you guys don't have any experience, as far as we're playing in 2s or 3s, I would play Fury in 2s and I would play Arms in 3s. It just makes it easier. For 2s, you literally find any healer as Fury and you just kill their healer. You just play it like you're doing a PvE fight. For Arms, it allows you to play more comps in 3s for Arms, whereas Fury, really you can only play with the Windwalker Monk. Maybe you can play with the Hunter DPS, but that's really it. As far as your 3s comps you can play with the DPS for Fury, it's kind of limited, right? Because the whole point of the Arms Warrior is that it brings the Mortal Strike. So if you're playing Fury and you don't have Mortal Strike, you're kind of out of luck, right? Because you got to look for these other specs that can bring that. So in regards to Fury PvP, if you guys are curious, I'm just running my single target stuff, right? So it's Condensed Life Force, Crucible of Flame. Obviously, if you have a third rank, you can go for Conflict and Strife. Your Azerites doesn't really matter. Like, you can still just play your current, single target Coastal Hot Blood. Yes, crit is a little bit worse in PvP, right? Because instead of giving you just double your damage, so instead of it giving you a 200% damage when you crit something, it's 150. So your crit is basically it's not 1/2 the power, it's like 3/4 the power of it would be in PvE, right? On top of that, of course, all of your Azerite traits gets nerfed by half anyway, so this is not a big deal. As far as your trinkets you can use, now there isn't like OP insanely like tank trinkets and tank weapons that people are using this season. I think most people just use like their PvP stuff, so like it'll be like your Notorious Gladiator's insignia and then your Notorious Gladiator's badge. But of course, there's some things you can use. If you do want to use PvE trinkets, best one probably is the Razor Coral if you can get a high eye level enough. Now, of course, this does give you crit. Back to the point about how crit isn't crazy strong, and it's physical damage, right? Anytime you look at physical damage, you have to think about the fact that some of the damage gets reduced by armor. The one thing I will say about Razor Coral, since it is physical, that means it can be removed by Bop, right? Because that removes all of your physical debuffs. Now, of course, the Pallies can bubble it, mages can ice block it, but that's fine. In regards to using Dribbling Ink Pod, you might think, hey, what if you just go double melee and you both have Dribbling Ink Pod? Problem with this trinket is that a healer can just dispel it. In PvP, this just counts as a magic effect. So let's say you get to like 30 stacks, right? Healer presses the spell once, it's gone. So I wouldn't recommend this trinket unless you're playing at a rating where you think the healers just don't press the spell. Then sure, it would be really strong. But generally, that's not going to happen. And then as far as for weapons, yes, there isn't an OP like tanking one, but Gotiku Cut of Death, you're probably going to be running this weapon for both Fury and Arms, because since in PvP you don't have 100% uptime, anything that's kind of like a proc base will almost seem better, because once you get the bleed to proc on them, they're just taking damage, and even if you have to like get off of melee for a few seconds, it'll keep doing damage. So that's good for that. As far as for talents, you're really just picking basically your Mythic Plus setup, right? Like Endless Rage, great. Stormbolt, CC is always nice in PvP. Sudden Death, great. Warpaint and Bounding Stride, you can kind of pick. Warpaint just allows you to survive better. Now, of course, if you're fighting in 2s and the opponent is super slippery and you know that you're not going to be taking any damage, sure, you can definitely take Bounding Stride. And then, Carnage, you have to pick that for this entire expansion. And then you can pick between Dragon Roar or Blaze Storm, but Blaze Storm is definitely much, much better. It makes you immune to CCs and slows. Why wouldn't you take this in PvP? And then for your last row, you can really go with any of these, but I still prefer Siegebreaker. It just gives you more burst windows. Like, if you use Reckless Abandon or Anger Management, you do kind of rely on Recklessness for a lot of your bursts, whereas Siegebreaker, you can have a burst every 30 seconds if you wanted to, right? And then, of course, for me, the playstyle nowadays for Fury, we just really get our one win above 2100 and we're done. But really, all you have to do is you just pop Condensed Life Force when you start the fight. 3 minutes later, when this is up again and they don't have all of their defensives, you press it again and you basically win the game. So that's really all there is for that. Oh, and then as far as for PvP talents, the two must-haves are Enduring Rage and Thirst of Battle. Enduring Rage just basically gives you 100% enrage uptime, which is crazy because now you're doing all of that increased damage. And if you have Warpaint, you're basically always taking 10% reduced damage, right? And then for Thirst for Battle, it makes you basically immune to any slows. Now, I don't know why it says snares and whatever. It's a bit confusing because you might read that as roots. It doesn't clear roots, right? It only clears slows. But if you have, if you're literally bloodthirsty on cooldown, you can basically never be slowed. And then, of course, your third one, you're either going to pick Spell Reflect, Disarm, Master Commander, depending on if you're going against, melee or caster DPS on the other end. And then as far as for our arms, it's easier, I would even say, because for arms, like for Fury, you can choose different majors, right? Depending on whatever DPS needs. But for arms, you're really going to go with your Conflict and Strife major. It's powerful because, in threes, you just want to make sure you live long enough because you will eventually whittle them down because you do have your Mortal Strike. And on top of that, the major Conflict and Strife gives you Sharpened Blade, which is really, really good PvP talent. And then for your minor, you want Memory of Lucid Dreams. So the most important thing is Conflict and Strife and Memory of Lucid Dreams. And then if you have another one, just pick whatever DPS you want. Like I just have Crucible Flame right now. Doesn't really matter. The one thing I will say in regards to Azerite traits, for Fury it didn't matter as much. For arms it matters more, is that the most meta thing right now is to run triple Gathering Storm, right? So that way when you Blaze Storm here, right, you're just getting a bunch of strength. Now we're gonna finish it at 6 stacks. That's the max it can go. Right now at my current eye level, 6,624 strength. That's a lot of strength. Now of course this is PvE, so I would expect in PvP it should be halved. But 3,000 plus strength is nothing to sneeze at, right? That's a lot of added damage. And the reason why you can do this is since you now get Conflict and Strife Major, you don't have to pick your PvP talent to be Sharpened Blade anymore, right? Because you get that from your essence. So now you can basically pick Storm of Destruction for almost every matchup, right? That reduces the cooldown of Blade Storm 33%, and it applies more wound to all targets. So you basically just kind of play like a multi-target .com where you just keep more wound on all of your enemies. That way they can't be healed as effectively, and you're just having your bleeds on everything, right? Because what bleeds do you have? First, you have your Mastery Bleed, which is when you hit your Mortal Strike, Blaze Storm, Execute, right? That leaves a bleed. You, of course, are going to play Rend. That leaves a bleed. And then even you're going to have your Katiku Cut of Death, right? That leaves a bleed. So there can be a good amount of spread damage that you can have as a arms warrior nowadays. The other talents, Sudden Death, same thing as Fury, just, added burst damage. Great. Stormbolt, CC, of course. Defensive Stance, it's a must-have. Arms warriors really aren't that tanky, so a lot of the matches you're going to be sitting defensive stance the whole time. And then Warbreaker, and then for this one, there's a choice between In for the Kill and Avatar. If you don't need Avatar, I would say if you don't need Avatar to break roots or anything, then just go In for the Kill, right? It just gives you a better burst for that 30-second window, whereas Avatar, you do have to wait a bit. Also, when you use Avatar, it heavily points out to your opponents that you're using your cooldowns. That's the one thing I don't like about using it, is that like, oh, well, that guy Avatar because it's humongous, just CC him, right? So I don't like it when a cooldown is super obvious to see for the enemy team. That's the same thing with, Avatar or even like Battle Cry for Fury. Like it's so obvious to see they use the cooldown. They literally don't even have to look at their buffs or debuffs. It kind of sucks. Anger Management is just a must pick for Arms Warriors at the moment. And then as far as for comps, you can run anything with Arms Warrior if you wanted to. You can run the caster and then the melee. So whatever groups you can get into as arms right now, definitely try it out. And yeah, hopefully that allows you guys to get whatever rating you want, whether it's 1800 or 2100, whatever it is. Obviously, if you can get to 2100, that's the best, because then you can have a chance of getting that 445 eye level chest piece or trophy to upgrade there. So that should help you guys get started in PvP stuff, right? We're not like masters of PvP or anything, but that should be good enough. As far as for Loyal to the End, I have some questions about like how strong Loyal to the End is. I guess if you guys haven't seen the streams, basically I've used Loyal to the End ever since I think the second week of the raid when I actually got this item that had it. The choice here was between Loyal to the End versus Reckless Flurry on this piece. So for those of you guys that don't know, Loyal to the End, it just gives you a set amount of mastery. And also, if you have any allies around you that also have Loyal to the End, then you will gain additional mastery for every additional person, up to 4 additional targets, right? So the different variances in Loyal to the End is if you only have it by yourself, if you have 1 additional ally, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. So technically, you can actually get a fully stacked Loyal to the End in a Mythic Plus because there's 5 people, right? So there's 4 allies. So even in Mythic Plus setting, if, all 4 other people are wearing Loyal to the End, which there's a good chance that it happens, right? I think healers generally have it, tanks have it, as long as they raid, right? It's easier to get pieces like this, and then you can actually use it there. Obviously, you know, we were just talking about for PvP, it's probably not worth it for that because, you know, there's only 1 or 2 other people in an arena, so it won't be as strong there. But obviously I'll have it for PvE. Also, the other thing is if anybody wearing Loyal to the End dies, they will give crit, haste, and versatility to everybody else that has Loyal to the End trait. So this is something that you don't even see in Sims, right? Where, you know, on progression fights, this is really powerful because anybody that has Loyal to the End dies, well, everybody else in the raid that has this trait is going to do more damage. I think currently in our raid, at least, I would say at least 10 people have Loyal to the End, which is huge. So, you know, on the last phase of the jar, when people start dying, right, there's going to be a lot of Loyal to the End buffs there. And if you guys are really curious, so right there, you can see the DPS breakdown between Reckless Flurry and Loyal to the End. So that first column is how much my character does with my current like talent setup. The only thing is instead of Loyal to the End, I have Reckless Flurry. And then of course the next columns down the line is if there's 0 allies, right? If I'm the only one that has it, or if there's 1, 2, 3, or 4 allies. Basically at around 2 allies, Loyal to the End is the same value as Reckless Flurry. It's very close. And then at 3 or 4, it basically overtakes it. I think if I compared it, if I had a piece where it had the exact same traits and I compared Loyal to the End to Cold Steel Hot Blood, I think having 4 allies, it might even beat that too. But definitely, you know, sim it out, try it out. You know, if you guys are curious in regards to how you can sim, you know, different numbers, right? If you go to raid bots right now, it's super easy, right? If you go to Top Gear, for example, you paste your sim C, you come all the way down to the bottom here, keep going, you come down here to simulation options, you just click it, it'll expand this window, and you can put a number here for Loyal to the End allies, right? So you can put in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also change your you know, War Vein allies too, your Undulating Tides allies too. So pretty good. These are really the only 3 things you need to do, right, in regards to how many allies you have. So very, very nice. There's even, you know, an aberration checkbox now, so really good. Come down here, simulation options, and of course the Undulating Tides, we can touch on it really quickly. Now we did say that it was very strong. It still is the same strength as it was when, you know, before the raid came out. Only problem is now that we see there's so many raids or raid fights in the Eternal Palace where you're just constantly taking AoE damage, it doesn't really make sense to wear Undulating Tides. I don't think I've ever worn Undulating Tides for the entire patch and raid. But if you're doing like normal, heroic, where you don't really take that much damage, sure, you can use it if you want. But I wouldn't do it. But if you're really curious, right, nowadays, you can just change the percentage and see how much it sims for you there and kind of make a decision that way. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful in regards to, you know, how you can get started in PvP, how strong Loyal to the End is. Also, one other thing for stats, versatility is very, very strong for PvP. So if you're like, oh, I don't know what to, you know, gem or enchant for PvP, and I only want a PvP, then yeah, you would just do versatility. And that's basically for both Fury and Arms. You can probably do some haste if you wanted to, but if you want to be safe, just go with versatility. It won't be a bad choice there. But as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.